In this lesson, we'll continue learning how to rig with curve deformers on our tentacle monster by focusing on the legs and the feet. So let's go ahead and get started. So in our previous lesson, we learned how we could take a solid drawing, in this case a tentacle, and rig it with curve deformers, which would essentially allow us to very effectively and very fluidly move that tentacle around, okay? And so this is what's a great feature with these deformer tools here in Toon Boom Harmony, is that we don't have to worry about breaking down our character into as many pieces. So with this tentacle, I didn't have to worry about breaking it down into multiple joints or worry about thinking about applying joints and how that tentacle could or could not move, okay? The deformation curves basically took care of all of that for me with just the simple rigging that I placed on it. Now, if you've closed the file and you're reopening it and you're not seeing the chain or the rig for these tentacles on our space monster here, you can easily find that deformation layer, select it in your layer section, and in your camera view, just click on this button right here, and that'll basically show you the rigged setup right there for each one of those arms. So in between lessons, I basically took the exact same approach with the right arm. So we just want to spend an additional lesson still learning about curve deformers by focusing on the legs and the feet. So with his legs, you could really take either route. You could use curve deformers or bone deformers, okay? Now, we're not going to touch on bone deformers just yet, but let's say you had a specific knee joint and you wanted these legs to move very mechanical-like. You may want to use bone curves or bone deformers, if you will. But as I think about how this character could be animated, right, I'm imagining his legs as having the ability to move almost elastic-like, very similar to how his tentacles can move, okay? So I think that would really just round out the personality of the character. So I want to use curve deformers for the legs. And again, each one of these legs is just one solid drawing layer. So just finding our leg 2, or his left leg, that's just one solid drawing. I don't have it broken up into different pieces, okay? So what we'll go ahead and do is enter setup mode and select our rigging tool. And you'll notice that in the previous lesson, we were using curve mode. I basically ensured that we were only applying curves. Let's go ahead and kind of explore this automatic mode that I kind of touched on in the previous lesson. Basically, to use automatic mode, it really comes down to the way in which you apply the rig, whether you click or click and drag. Okay, so if you just clicked, what you're doing is you're actually setting up bone deformers, okay? And so you can see how mechanical that is, right? What we want to do, though, is set up curve deformers. So going back to our rigging tool, you would still click for that initial offset point, and again, make sure you're on your leg layer, having it selected in your layer section. You would click for the offset point, and then you would click and drag, and that basically pulls out that Bezier handle for you. So really, automatic mode is really nice because you don't have to go back through and stretch out those Bezier handles. You can kind of do it all in one motion, which is very nice. So just kind of doing the same thing there, just kind of pulling that up and dragging out those Bezier handles like so. So really handy. And again, we can basically grab our transform tool and we can still kind of tweak the overall placement of those Bezier handles if we want. So just kind of moving them around here. Just kind of spacing them out to my liking. So that feels pretty nice, okay? And so let's go ahead and exit setup mode. And you can see how it kind of jacks up the leg just a little bit. That's okay. Again, we'll make sure that we select the deformation layer that was created and is apparent to leg 2. And once we have that selected, we'll hit this button again. This basically transfers over the resting position or the resting state, the state in which we rigged the leg, to the current state that allows us to basically manipulate the leg. And there you have it. Okay, so that's exactly how it looked as we rigged it. And so now, still using our transformation tool, we could grab any one of these curve points and you can see how how very cool that is, how we're able to just basically bend and move that leg around. That's so stinking awesome. And you can see how that just saves a lot of time. You didn't have to break the leg down. And again, thinking about just how the personality of the character and how you would want it to move, this is great. If you wanted it to have kind of these elastic-like legs, this is the way to go. So very cool stuff. Now I'm actually going to go ahead and take a few steps back there, just hitting Control-Z on our keyboard. I'm not really ready to position that leg just yet. I want to go ahead and kind of focus on his foot right here, basically his left foot. So when we're thinking about animating this character, right, how he would move, okay, we're thinking about him taking steps. And so as he walks, this foot needs to basically look like it's bending at certain points. You don't want the foot to appear like it's just a solid piece. It would look kind of awkward, kind of kill the fluidity of your animation. So this would be a great opportunity to use deformation curves. So let's go ahead and find that foot, which is right here, foot 2, right? We'll do the same thing, rigging tool, setup mode, and we want to think about the placement of the curve, okay? So as I've mentioned towards the end of the previous lesson, it's a lot easier on something like this tentacle or this leg. We can just kind of go straight through it. We pretty well know how it's going to allow us to manipulate and bend those drawings. But with something like this, you need to think just a little bit more about the placement. And really, it kind of comes down to trial and error, honestly, because it all really does come down to the design of your character. So we could kind of try maybe starting with our offset point there, maybe dragging right here, and then clicking and dragging right here, for example. Okay, so let's go ahead and exit setup mode, and let's kind of see what that allows us to do. So just grabbing our transform tool, we can kind of start to see how it allows us to bend the foot, but we don't really have the control. I can't really get a lot of the foot poses in regards to bending the foot the way I would like to. Okay, so let's go ahead and just take a few steps back here. Okay, and again, making sure we have that foot selected in our layers section. What I might want to do, we'll go back to setup mode, grab our rigging tool. I may want to come along the edge right here, this edge right here. Think of this as kind of the front facing part of the foot. I may want to go ahead and drop a chain of curve deformers right along that line because I'm thinking about where the foot can bend, okay? And this might be a more appropriate place as opposed to right down the center or even on the back side. So let's just try that out and just see what it does for us. So we'll drop another offset point. We may want to go ahead and drop a curve right there, just clicking and dragging. And then we'll also maybe come out just a little ways. Again, it really is kind of trial and error. It does depend on how you've designed your character, all right? Go ahead and grab our transform tool. I'll kind of tweak these Bezier handles just a little bit here. Okay, very good. Let's go ahead and exit setup mode. You may see it kind of blow out our foot just a little bit. That's okay. Click on that deformation layer, and then once again, we'll click on this button right here. And boom, it takes it right back to the way it should look. Okay, so let's grab making sure we have our transform tool. Let's start to kind of see how we can bend this foot. So I'm starting to feel like I can get a little bit better bend with this setup, this rigged setup with the foot. Okay, and we can also rotate, as I mentioned before, from that offset point. So think about, if he's walking at some point and he's bending that foot as it makes contact with the ground. Perhaps he's pushing off of it. We can start to kind of get that kind of shape. So I think something like that would be very appropriate. So again, it is trial and error. It comes down to the design of the character that you have, the character you're working with, and where you would basically apply that rigged deformer curves to that drawing layer. Okay, but I think that'll work pretty nicely. So what we're going to focus on in our next lesson is basically setting up a hierarchy arrangement for our entire character. So naturally, if we move the leg, we would like it to have the foot follow along. Because right now, if we rotate from the leg's offset point, that foot doesn't follow along. So we're going to talk about how we can set up a hierarchy arrangement in not only the layers panel, but also the network view, okay? And we'll also talk about moving things in Z depth as well, which you'll probably have to do, especially once you start kind of parenting certain different parts of this character to other areas, okay? So we basically want the arms to be connected to the giant head here, which is basically his body, and we want the legs to be connected to that, and we also want the feet to follow along with the legs, okay? So stick around, and we'll tackle all of that in our next lesson.